Kwame divorced his poor wife after her business failed. Unaware of her $100 million fortune, he didn't just leave her, he destroyed her in front of the world. On the same day her boutique turned to ashes, he threw divorce papers in her trembling hands and walked away with her own employee. "Failure is all you'll ever be, Amara. You're nothing to me now. Sign this and disappear." Those were the cruel words Kwame spat as her tears fell onto the paper. Instead of holding her through the storm, he handed her to humiliation. Instead of loyalty, he chose betrayal. He thought she would remain broken, forgotten, buried under whispers of shame. But what he never knew was that the woman he cast aside carried a secret, a fortune waiting to rise with her, a gift that would not only rebuild her life, but also strip away the pride he wore like a crown. Sometimes the ones you discard become the ones you cannot escape. Sometimes the woman you mock as worthless becomes the very name the world applauds. This is not just another tale of betrayal. It is the cry of a heart abandoned, the journey of a soul crushed and rebuilt, and the reminder that dignity shines brightest after the darkest nights. The boutique door slammed open and Amara stumbled inside carrying 3 heavy bags of fabrics, her hands trembling from exhaustion. It was past midnight, the street outside empty, but her light still burned. Dust clung to her brown cheeks, and her once elegant hanbok-inspired dress was marked with stains from hours of work. She had spent the entire day meeting suppliers in Seoul's textile district, negotiating prices, and delivering finished clothes to customers herself. Yet, when she entered her small apartment upstairs, Kwame, her Korean husband, was sprawled lazily on the couch, television flickering before his face, a glass of soju in his hand. He didn't even look up. "Finally," he muttered, eyes fixed on the screen. "Took you long enough, did you bring the money?" His voice was sharp, not with concern but with entitlement. Amara's heart sank. She wanted to tell him how she had skipped meals to save on costs, how she had walked miles because she couldn't afford transport, how her feet burned from standing in the Dongdaemun market all day. But she swallowed the words. Instead, she placed a crumpled envelope of cash on the table. Kwame snatched it without gratitude, flipping through the notes. "Not enough. How do you expect us to live like this? Look at me, Amara. I should be a man with status, not living off scraps from your little shop." Amara blinked back tears, but her voice remained steady. "I'm trying, Kwame. The boutique is growing. I just need more time. Every cent goes back into keeping it alive." From the corner, Jaeyeon, their young employee, barely 22, with quiet eyes that seemed too observant, stood arranging new fabric on the shelf. She watched silently, lips pressed tight, as Amara's devotion was met with scorn. The neighbors outside whispered whenever they passed. "That African woman works herself to death while her Korean husband enjoys himself," they would say. Some admired her determination, but most mocked the imbalance. "She doesn't know she's married to her own burden." Amara ignored their voices. She believed love required sacrifice. She believed her efforts would one day turn their lives around. Her boutique was not just a business, it was her dream, her way of proving she could build something lasting in this country that still looked at her as an outsider. But as she watched Kwame pour himself another drink with money she had earned, doubt crept into her heart like a shadow. Jaeyeon broke the silence, her voice calm but edged with something Amara didn't notice. "Don't worry, Sajangnam. Hard work never fails. One day you'll be rewarded." Amara gave her a tired smile, grateful for the encouragement, never realizing Jaeyeon's eyes lingered too long on Kwame. That night, Amara collapsed into bed, whispering a prayer for strength. She had no idea the storm was closer than she thought, and that her sacrifices would soon be tested in ways she could never imagine. She believed her boutique was unshakable, but before dawn, fate would prove her wrong. The night sky glowed red. Amara shot up from her bed as neighbors screamed in the street. When she threw open the window, her heart froze. Her boutique was on fire. Flames licked through the wooden beams, swallowing the signboard she had painted with her own hands. Amara's heritage, written in both English and Korean. Sparks hissed into the air, and the smell of smoke choked her lungs. "Amara, Amara," a neighbor shouted, banging on her door. "Your shop, hurry." Barefoot, she ran down the stairs, the ground scorching beneath her steps. A small crowd had already gathered, some pointing in shock, others whispering. Water buckets were passed, but the fire was too strong, too fast. In seconds, her shelves, fabrics, and the hard work of years crumbled into ash. Amara dropped to her knees, tears streaming. She reached out as if her hands could hold the collapsing beams, but they fell with a roar, forcing her back. Behind her, Quame appeared, not to comfort her but to sigh with annoyance. "Unbelievable. All my plans ruined because of your carelessness," he hissed, clutching his robe as if the smoke dirtied him. Amara looked at him, trembling. "Our boutique, it's gone, Quame, everything is gone." Instead of holding her, he spat on the ground. "Not asterisk or's asterisk, Amara, yours asterisk. I never asked you to waste your life in that little shop. Now look, nothing but debt and shame." His words cut sharper than the flames. Moments later, a stern voice broke through the chaos. Mr. Park, the local bank manager, marched toward them, his tall frame commanding silence. He had loaned Amara money to expand the boutique months ago. His face was tight with anger. "Amara SSI," he said firmly, ignoring the fire. "This is a disaster. Do you realize how much you still owe us? Your collateral won't cover it. You need to find a way to pay immediately." Amara stammered. "Please, Park Sajangnam, give me time. I'll rebuild, I promise." But Mr. Park's eyes narrowed. "Hope does not pay debts. Banks need results, not promises. You have 1 week before legal action begins." The crowd murmured. Mrs. Kim, Quame's mother, stepped forward, her lips curled with disgust. "Didn't I warn you, Quame?" she said loud enough for all to hear in Korean. "This African woman brings nothing but disgrace. She drags you down and you stand here like a fool defending her. Shame on you both." Quame's jaw tightened, but instead of defending Amara, he turned away. His silence spoke louder than words. He was already slipping from her side. Amara wrapped her arms around herself as the fire hissed lower, leaving only blackened ruins. Her boutique, her sweat, her sacrifices, gone in one cruel night. But worse than the fire was the shift she felt in the people around her. Their eyes no longer saw her as a fighter. They saw her as a failure. And in the corner, Jaeyeon stood with folded arms, her gaze calm, almost too calm. Amara thought the fire had destroyed enough. But the real flames, the ones inside her marriage, were only just beginning to burn. The slap echoed through the small apartment like a gunshot. Quame's palm had struck Amara across the cheek, leaving her stunned and trembling. She clutched her face, staring at the man she once called her partner. "All this time," he spat, packing the room, "I carried your shame. People laugh at me in the streets, Amara. They whisper that I live off a failed woman. Do you think I'll let you drag me down forever?" Amara's lips quivered. "I lost everything in the fire, Quame. I'm trying to hold us together. Can't you see that?" But his eyes were full of contempt. "Trying? You're nothing but a weight on my shoulders. I need a wife who lifts me, not one who buries me in ashes." The words pierced deeper than the blow. Amara turned away, tears falling silently. She had given him her best years, her strength, her dreams. Now, in her weakest moment, he treated her as nothing. At that moment, Auntie Grace, Amara's bitter aunt who had moved to Korea years ago, arrived, her voice shrill as she entered. She had never liked Amara and often favored Quame. "I told you, Amara," she said coldly, hands on her hips. "This marriage was bound to fail. A man like Quame deserves better than a woman who can't even keep a business alive. You should be ashamed." Amara's heart twisted. To be blamed by her own family was a wound she could hardly bear. Meanwhile, outside the apartment, neighbors gossiped loudly. Their whispers carried through the thin walls. Poor Amara, she tried too hard, but look at her now, nothing left. And her husband already slipping away. Some pitied her, but most mocked. The same mouths that once praised her determination now laughed at her failure. Even her old customers, once loyal, drifted elsewhere. Her quality was good, they muttered, but who trusts a woman who can't manage her own life? The betrayal stung. not in coins but in trust lost. In the shadows, Jae-yeon moved quietly around the boutique's ashes, offering Amara soft words of encouragement, but her eyes often strayed toward Kwame. She carried baskets of salvaged cloth as if helping, but her smile toward Amara's husband lingered longer than it should. Amara clung to hope, whispering to herself at night, "This storm will pass. He'll see I'm still the same woman he loved." But even as she prayed, she felt the distance growing. The warmth of love was turning into the cold silence of resentment. One evening, when she brought Kwame his dinner, he shoved the plate away. "I don't want your pity food. Maybe I need a woman who knows how to succeed, not one who drags me into shame." His eyes flicked toward Jae-yeon, who stood quietly in the doorway, and Amara's heart sank with a new fear she dared not name. Amara thought she was fighting only the fire's aftermath, but another fire, one burning in secrecy, was already consuming her home. The kiss was sudden, stolen in the shadows of the ruined boutique. Kwame's lips brushed against Jae-yeon's, his hand gripping her wrist. The young employee gasped, but instead of pulling away, she smiled faintly. "If Amara Iani finds out," Jae-yeon whispered. Kwame smirked, lowering his voice. "She won't. She's too blind with failure to notice anything. Besides, you're the only one who understands me now." That night, Amara walked into the shop's burnt shell to find Jae-yeon dusting charred shelves. The young woman greeted her warmly as if nothing had happened. "Don't lose hope, Sajangnam. You're stronger than this. I'll stay by your side no matter what." Her words dripped with loyalty, and Amara, weary and broken, believed them. But Jae-yeon's friend Minjae, bold and greedy, whispered poison into her ear whenever they met in the market. "Why waste time helping Amara?" Minjae sneered. "Kwame Opa is a man with ambition. Stay close to him and you'll live a life of comfort. Forget loyalty. Loyalty doesn't buy designer handbags or fine apartments." Jae-yeon hesitated, torn between appearances of kindness and the lure of greed. Her eyes sparkled when she imagined the life Minjae promised. Meanwhile, Kwame's old friend Junho slapped him on the back in a local bar. Junho was the kind who thrived on ego and arrogance, a man who lived for shallow victories. "Why chain yourself to a sinking ship?" he laughed, sipping his whiskey. "You've got youth on your side, money to make, women to chase. That wife of yours, she's dead weight. A man like you deserves better." Kwame nodded, drinking in the flattery. Junho's words ignited something dangerous inside him, the belief that leaving Amara wasn't betrayal, but freedom. Back at home, Amara worked late into the night, sketching plans for a new boutique with trembling hands. She didn't see how Kwame lingered longer by Jae-yeon's side. She didn't hear the whispers exchanged behind her back. She still believed her sacrifices bound them together. "Kwame," she said softly one evening, serving him dinner. "Thank you for staying with me. I know things are hard, but I promise I'll rise again. I'll make you proud." He looked at her, silent for a moment, then forced a smile. "Of course, Amara, I'll always stand by you." His words felt like comfort, but in his eyes there was no love, only calculation. Later that night, while Amara wept quietly in her room, Kwame and Jae-yeon exchanged another secret glance. False loyalty had wrapped itself around Amara's world like a snake, and she had no idea its fangs were already aimed at her heart. The courtroom gasped as the papers slammed onto the wooden desk. Kwame had thrown them with a smirk, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Sign them, Amara. Today you stop embarrassing me as my wife." Amara froze, her trembling hand hovering over the divorce documents. Her heart raced. She had not been warned, not even in whispers at home. To be summoned here in front of strangers, only to be humiliated by the man she once trusted, was a cruelty beyond words. The judge glanced at her with pity. Neighbors packed the benches, whispering as if they had come to watch a drama unfold. "She worked like a slave, and this is her reward," one murmured. Another replied, "Maybe she deserves it. A woman who can't keep her husband happy loses her place." And then, like salt on a fresh wound, Jae-yeon walked in. Her steps were deliberate, her smile unapologetic. She slid into the seat beside Quame, her hand resting boldly on his arm. Gasps rippled across the room. Amara's eyes widened in disbelief. "Jayon, you." Her voice cracked. Jayon tilted her chin proudly. "Don't look so shocked, Iani. Some of us know how to hold on to a man." Her words dripped with venom disguised as sweetness. Quame leaned back in his chair, enjoying the spectacle. "She's not just my new partner in life, Amara. She'll help me rebuild everything you ruined. This is the woman I should have chosen from the start." Amara's chest tightened. Every sacrifice, every late night, every tear for this man had been reduced to public ashes. In the back row, Mrs. Kim shook her head with approval. "Finally, my son sees sense," she muttered loud enough for others to hear in Korean. "That African woman was a curse to him from the beginning." Amara's pen slipped from her grasp. She looked around, searching for a kind face, but all she found were whispers, mockery, and silence. Her dreams, her dignity, her marriage, all torn apart in one brutal act. Still, she steadied herself. "Quame," she said softly, her voice carrying more pain than anger. "You don't know what you're doing. Betrayal doesn't bring happiness, it only destroys." But Quame laughed bitterly. "What destroys is failure, Amara, and you are failure itself." The judge cleared his throat, signaling the end of the session. But Amara's world had already ended long before his gavel struck. She gathered the shredded remains of her courage and walked out, her steps heavy, her heart bleeding. Behind her, Jayon kissed Quame's cheek in front of the crowd, sealing the humiliation. The spectators erupted in whispers. The betrayal was no longer hidden. It was paraded like a crown. Amara thought the courtroom was the lowest point, but true isolation was waiting outside, a silence more painful than public shame. The door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing like a final sentence. Amara staggered into her empty apartment, collapsing onto the floor. The silence pressed in, heavier than the courtroom whispers. Her chest heaved as sobs ripped through her body. For the first time in years, she was utterly alone. She curled into herself, hands clutching her arms as if to hold the pieces of her soul together. The betrayal in court, the mocking eyes of neighbors, Jayon's smug smile, it all replayed in her mind like knives cutting deeper with every memory. Suddenly, a knock rattled the door. Hope flickered for a moment. Maybe Quame had come back, maybe it was all a mistake. But when she opened it, Auntie Grace stood there, her expression sharp and cold. "You brought this on yourself," Grace said without hesitation. "I warned you that Quame deserved better. Now look at you. No husband, no business, nothing. You're a disgrace to this family." Amara's knees buckled, but she clung to the door frame, whispering, "Auntie, please. Not now." Grace scoffed and turned away. "Don't expect sympathy. You're alone because you chose to fail." Amara sank to the floor, tears blurring her vision. Hours later, the door creaked open gently. Kofi, her quiet cousin, stepped in. He was a man in his 30s with kind eyes and a soft presence that always made Amara feel safe. Without words, he knelt beside her, offering a handkerchief. "You don't deserve this," Kofi said softly. "I've watched you give everything, Amara. Don't let his betrayal define you." Amara clutched the handkerchief, her tears soaking it. "But Kofi, I have nothing left. How can I stand when everything has been taken?" He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You still have yourself, and you still have people who won't leave you." Moments later, Halmione Park, her longtime caregiver and helper, entered with a bag of food. Her face was lined with age, but her heart was steady as stone. She set the bag down and cupped Amara's face in her rough hands. "Child," Halmione said gently in broken English mixed with Korean, "you've carried too much on your own. Cry if you must, but tomorrow you will rise. Pain is not the end. It is a beginning in disguise." Amara's sobs slowed as the warmth of Kofi's loyalty and Halmione's comfort surrounded her. Yet outside the window, the voices of neighbors still pierced the night. "Did you hear? Quame left her in court. She's finished." "She'll never recover. Some women are just born to be forgotten." The words sliced through the fragile peace inside. reminding Amara that the world was already writing her off. She pulled the blanket over herself, her eyes red but open. Sleep would not come, only the ache of loss and the fear of tomorrow. And in the darkness, a thought whispered across her heart. What if they were right? Amara believed despair had buried her, but a letter waiting in the shadows would soon ignite a spark she thought was lost forever. The envelope hit the table with a heavy thud. Ms. Lee, a well-dressed lawyer in her 40s with sharp eyes and a calm presence, looked straight at Amara. This arrived at my office weeks ago. It's addressed to you, from your late Uncle Quame. Amara's hands shook as she reached for it. Uncle Quame, her mother's brother who had made his fortune in Ghana before moving to Korea, had been distant, a man she hadn't seen in years. Why now? Why her? She tore it open, the paper inside trembling with her breath. My dear Amara, I know this may reach you in your darkest hour. I have watched from afar, silent but never uncaring. Life has tested you, and though you may feel broken, I see strength in you others do not. I leave you with more than wealth. I leave you with a chance to rise, to rebuild, and to shine again. But remember, this gift comes with a condition. Use it not for vengeance, but for good. Only then will it bear fruit. Your uncle who believed in you. Que Mensa. Tears blurred Amara's eyes. She clutched the letter to her chest, her heart pounding. For the first time since the fire, something other than despair stirred inside her, a spark, fragile but alive. Kofi leaned closer, his voice gentle. Amara, this is more than money. This is hope. Halmione Park, standing behind her, wiped a tear with the edge of her scarf. Child, didn't I say pain is the beginning of something new? Your uncle saw what we see. You are stronger than this storm. Amara's voice cracked. But what if I fail again? What if I waste even this? Ms. Lee's gaze softened. Then you rise again. This is not about failure, Amara. It's about purpose. Your uncle believed in you. I do too. Amara looked down at the letter once more, her fingers tracing the words. $100 million. The fortune was real. The chance was real. And for the first time since the fire consumed her boutique, since Quame threw those papers in her face, since the world wrote her off as nothing, Amara felt the stirring of something powerful. Not revenge, not bitterness, but the quiet, unstoppable determination to prove them all wrong. 3 months had passed since the letter arrived. Amara stood in front of a massive glass building in Gangnam, her reflection staring back at her. The woman in the glass wore a tailored cream suit with Ankara print accents along the lapels, a fusion of her heritage and her new reality. Her locks were styled elegantly, her posture no longer that of someone broken, but someone reborn. The sign above the entrance read, Amara Heritage Global Bridging Cultures, Building Futures. Inside, the lobby buzzed with activity. Young designers, both Korean and African, moved between workstations displaying vibrant fabrics that married traditional Korean hanbok silhouettes with bold African prints. It was everything her small boutique had dreamed of becoming, now magnified 100-fold. Ms. Lee walked beside her, tablet in hand. Your first flagship store opens in Myeongdong next week. Pre-orders have exceeded projections by 300%. The collaboration with the Seoul Fashion Institute has been confirmed, and, she paused, a slight smile crossing her professional demeanor. Vogue Korea wants an exclusive interview. Amara's heart swelled, but she kept her voice steady. And the scholarship program. Fully funded. 20 young women from underprivileged backgrounds, 10 Korean, 10 from various African countries, will receive full design training and business mentorship starting next month. Kofi appeared from the design studio, a broad smile on his face. Sister, you need to see the new collection. The team outdid themselves. As Amara walked through her company, employees bowed respectfully. Some whispered in awe, not mockery this time, but genuine admiration. Is that really her, the woman who lost everything? She's incredible, built all this in just 3 months. I heard she's donating profits to help other struggling businesswomen. Halmione Park sat in a corner office Amara had specially created for her, sipping tea and watching over everything like a proud guardian. When Amara passed, the old woman reached out and squeezed her hand. "Your uncle would be proud," Hermione whispered. "You chose the good path." But even as success bloomed around her, Amara made a conscious choice. She refused interviews that wanted to focus on her divorce. She declined opportunities to publicly shame Quaim and Jaeyeon, even when reporters practically begged for the scandal. "My story is not about revenge," she told Ms. Lee firmly. "It's about rebuilding. Let my success speak for itself." Yet in the shadows of Seoul's social circles, word was spreading. The woman Quaim had humiliated in court was now the talk of the fashion world. The failure he'd discarded was becoming a name everyone knew. And Quaim was beginning to hear the whispers. Quaim stared at his laptop screen, his face pale. The headline read, "From Ashes to Empire, Amara Osai's incredible comeback story." Below it, photos of Amara at a charity gala, looking radiant and confident, surrounded by Seoul's elite. Another image showed her cutting the ribbon at her new headquarters. Jaeyeon walked into their small apartment, much smaller than the one Quaim had shared with Amara, carrying grocery bags. Her designer bag, the one Quaim had bought her with money he didn't have, hung limply from her shoulder. "Opa, did you transfer the money for?" She stopped when she saw his face. "What's wrong?" He turned the laptop toward her. Jaeyeon's eyes widened. That's impossible. She had nothing. The boutique burned down, the debt." "Apparently she had an inheritance," Quaim said bitterly. "A massive one, and she's been building an empire while we've been." He didn't finish the sentence, but they both knew. While Amara rose, they had been sinking. The business venture Quaim had started with Jaeyeon, a trendy cafe, was failing. Investors he'd courted, impressed by his confidence, had pulled out when they realized he had more ego than skill. The few customers they had were dwindling. His mother, Mrs. Kim, had stopped sending money after Jaeyeon's disrespectful behavior at a family gathering. His friends, like Junho, had vanished the moment Quaim could no longer afford to buy rounds at expensive bars. Jaeyeon's face hardened. "So what? We don't need her success. We have each other." But her voice lacked conviction. The glamorous life she'd imagined when she betrayed Amara hadn't materialized. Instead of luxury, she got late rent payments. Instead of status, she got knowing looks from neighbors who remembered how she'd stolen another woman's husband. Quaim's phone buzzed. A message from his former colleague. "Bro, did you see your ex-wife is everywhere? Man, you really fumbled." Another message. "Amara's company is hearing. Pays way better than anything you're doing. Wild, right?" Each message was a knife twisting deeper. That evening, as Jaeyeon scrolled through social media, she found herself on Amara's company page. The comments were overwhelming. "She's an inspiration. From tragedy to triumph, this is what resilience looks like. I heard her ex-husband left her when she had nothing. His loss." Jaeyeon's hands trembled. The woman she'd helped destroy, the woman whose trust she'd betrayed, was now unreachable, not broken, but risen far beyond anything Jaeyeon could ever achieve. Min-jae, her friend who'd encouraged the affair, called that night. "Ya, Jaeyeona, I saw the news. That's your old boss, right? The one you said would never amount to anything." Jaeyeon hung up without answering. In their tiny apartment, Quaim paced while Jaeyeon sat in silence. The weight of their choices pressed down like a stone. "Maybe," Quaim finally said, his voice small, "maybe I should reach out to her. Apologize, she might." "She might what?" Jaeyeon snapped. "Take you back, help you, after what we did." Quaim had no answer. Outside their window, Seoul's lights sparkled. Somewhere in those lights, Amara was building her empire, surrounded by people who valued her. And here, in this cramped apartment, the two people who'd betrayed her were discovering that stolen happiness never lasts. The poison they'd planted was finally bearing its fruit, but only for them. Amara stepped out of her chauffeur-driven car in front of the Seoul National Museum, where a prestigious charity auction was being held. She had donated several pieces from her collection, with all proceeds going to support orphanages across Korea and Ghana. Her emerald green gown, a stunning fusion of Korean silk and African wax print, turned heads as she entered. Cameras flashed. Reporters called her name. Ms. Osai, how does it feel to be named one of Seoul's top entrepreneurs? Ms. Osai, is it true you're expanding to Paris and New York? She smiled graciously, answered a few questions, then moved inside where Seoul's elite mingled over champagne and art. Kofi stood protectively nearby, now serving as her business partner and chief of operations. You're the star of the evening. He whispered, even the Minister of Trade wants to meet you. Amara was about to respond when she froze. Across the room, looking decidedly out of place in an ill-fitting suit, stood Kwame. Their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Amara's heart didn't race with anger or pain, only a quiet, settled sadness for the man who'd once meant everything to her. Kwame's face went pale. He hadn't expected to see her here. He'd only come because a desperate business contact promised introductions to potential investors. Jaeyeon clung to his arm, her dress obviously borrowed, her confidence from the courtroom long gone. When she saw Amara, she looked down immediately. Mrs. Kim, Kwame's mother, stood nearby speaking with other guests. When she noticed Amara, her expression shifted from superiority to shock. The other guests had noticed too. Whispers rippled through the room. That's her ex-husband, the one who divorced her in court. He left her when she had nothing. Look at him now and look at her. Karma is real. Kwame wanted to disappear, but before he could move, several people approached Amara, drawing her into conversation. She was gracious, warm, completely at ease. One elderly businessman, Mr. Choi, one of Seoul's most respected figures, spoke loudly enough for many to hear. Ms. Osai, your story is remarkable. To rise from such hardship with such grace, you are a testament to true character. Amara smiled humbly. Thank you, Mr. Choi, but I believe hardship reveals character, it doesn't build it. I'm simply grateful for the second chance I've been given. Mr. Choi nodded approvingly, then his eyes landed on Kwame. Recognition flickered across his face. Ah, Mr. Park, I believe I heard you were seeking investment for a cafe venture. Kwame nodded eagerly, stepping forward. Yes, sir, if you have a moment. Mr. Choi raised his hand. I make it a policy never to invest in men who lack loyalty. A man who abandons his wife in her darkest hour cannot be trusted in business either. Good evening. The dismissal was cold and absolute. Kwame stood frozen, humiliation burning his cheeks. Several other potential investors who'd shown interest earlier suddenly remembered they had other appointments. Jaeyeon tugged his arm. Let's go, she whispered desperately. But before they could leave, Mrs. Kim approached Amara. The older woman's pride was wounded, but something else flickered in her eyes, regret, perhaps, or shame. Amara, she said stiffly, you've done well for yourself. Amara met her former mother-in-law's gaze with quiet dignity. Thank you, Iamione. I hope you are well. The kindness in Amara's voice, the refusal to gloat or strike back, made Mrs. Kim's face crumple slightly. She nodded and walked away quickly, unable to maintain the facade. Finally, Kwame gathered his courage and approached. Amara, he said quietly, can we talk just for a moment? Kofi stepped forward protectively, but Amara placed a gentle hand on his arm. It's all right, Kofi. She led Kwame to a quieter corner of the gallery, away from prying eyes. Jaeyeon remained behind, isolated and uncomfortable among the glittering crowd. Kwame's hands shook. I didn't know about your uncle, about any of this. I know, Amara said simply. If I had known. Would it have mattered? She asked, not cruelly, but genuinely. Would you have stayed if you'd known wealth was coming, or did you leave because you believed I was worth nothing? Kwame had no answer. The truth sat heavy between them. I'm sorry, he finally whispered. For everything, the courtroom, the humiliation, Jaeyeon, I was wrong. Amara studied his face, the man she'd once loved, now hollow and desperate. I forgive you, Kwame, she said softly. His eyes widened with hope. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You made your choice. You chose cruelty when I needed kindness. You chose betrayal when I offered loyalty. I've moved forward, and I hope someday you find peace with your decisions. Amara, please, I made a mistake. We could. No, she said firmly, but not unkindly. That door is closed, not because of anger, but because I've learned my worth, and it's not measured by what I own, but by who I am. I hope you learn that too. She turned to walk away, then paused. I wish you well, Quame, truly, but my life is no longer tied to yours. As Amara walked back into the light of the gala, surrounded by people who valued and respected her, Quame stood in the shadows, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd lost. It wasn't the money. It was the woman herself. 6 months later, Amara stood before a crowd of 200 women, entrepreneurs, students, mothers, dreamers, at a conference she'd organized called Rising Again, Women Who Rebuild. The venue was packed. Women of all backgrounds, Korean, African, mixed heritage, immigrants, filled the seats. Some clutched notebooks. Others wiped tears as Amara shared her story. I stood in a courtroom, she said, her voice clear and strong. While the man I loved told the world I was worthless, I watched my business burn. I heard neighbors say I'd never rise again. She paused, looking across the sea of faces. But here's what I learned. Your worth is not determined by who stays or who leaves. It's not measured by what burns down or what gets taken away. Your worth is inherent. It existed before the storm, and it remains after. The crowd erupted in applause. In the front row sat Hermione Park, tears streaming down her weathered face. Beside her, Kofi smiled proudly. Ms. Lee sat with her tablet, already fielding requests for Amara's next speaking engagement. After the event, a young woman approached, barely 20, her eyes red from crying. Ms. Osai, she said in broken English mixed with Korean. My husband left me last month. He said I was stupid for trying to start a business. I felt like giving up, but your story, it gave me hope. Amara took the young woman's hands. What's your name? Fatima. Fatima, listen to me. Your dreams are valid. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And if you need help, mentorship, resources, anything, my door is open. Fatima sobbed, bowing deeply in gratitude. This became Amara's new mission, not just building a fashion empire, but lifting others as she climbed. Meanwhile, across the city, Quame sat in his nearly empty cafe. Jayon had left him 2 months ago, moving back to her hometown after realizing the glamorous life she'd imagined would never materialize. The cafe was closing. Bankruptcy was imminent. His phone buzzed, a news notification. Amara Osai named Seoul's Businesswoman of the Year. He stared at the article, at the photo of Amara receiving her award, radiant and successful. For the first time, Quame didn't feel anger or envy. He felt something else, a deep, crushing understanding of his own foolishness. He'd had a treasure and treated it like trash. A knock on the cafe door interrupted his thoughts. A young man entered, someone from Amara's company. Mr. Park, the man said professionally, Ms. Osai wanted me to deliver this. He handed Quame an envelope and left without another word. Inside was a check, enough to cover Quame's debts and close the cafe without complete ruin. With it, a brief note in Amara's handwriting. This is not because you deserve it. This is because I choose to be free from bitterness. Use this to start over, and this time, build something with integrity. Amara. Quame's hands trembled as tears fell onto the paper. She had every right to let him sink, to watch him suffer as he'd made her suffer. But she chose grace instead. 2 years later, Amara Heritage Global had stores in 12 countries. The scholarship program had graduated its first class, with several students launching their own successful brands. Amara sat in her office overlooking Seoul's skyline, reviewing applications for the foundation she'd established, dedicated to helping women rebuild after divorce, business failure, or personal tragedy. Kofi entered with coffee. Still working, you're going to burn yourself out. She smiled. says the man who sent emails at 2 a.m. last night. He laughed, then grew serious. You know, I'm proud of you, sister. Not for the money or the success, but for who you've become through it all. I'm proud of me too, Amara said softly. Finally. Her phone buzzed, a message from Halmione Park. Come for dinner, I made your favorite. As Amara gathered her things, she glanced at the small photo on her desk. It was from the day her boutique burned, her standing in the ashes, tears on her face, everything lost. She'd kept it not as a reminder of pain, but as a testament to resilience. That woman in the ashes had become this woman in the skyscraper. Not through revenge. Not through bitterness. But through choosing, every single day, to rise. As Amara walked out into Seoul's evening lights, she realized the truth. Kwame hadn't destroyed her that day in the courtroom. He'd freed her to become who she was always meant to be. And for that, though he'd never understand it, she was finally truly grateful. Sometimes the ones who betray you do you the greatest favor. They remove themselves from the path of your greatness.